All right, so yesterday we completed our underpainting. So today what we're going to do, the first thing is we're going to complete drop shadows. So make sure that when you're working right now that you have your photo of that leaf. Try to open it up in a new tab, save it, and then open it up so it gets really big, or if you're, again, on a tablet or something like that, just make sure you're zooming in. So when we add the shadow, and I'm going to turn this, it's going to be upside down for you guys. We want to look at where is the shadow for this leaf. So by zooming in, you'll be able to see it. So we're going to use a flat brush. So you want to try to find a flat brush, which means it just looks like a little square. And I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush to start off with. But this way it works a little bit better to some degree. I'm going to take that burnt sienna that I have and my phthalo blue. I'm going to mix those together to create my shadow. I'm also going to try adding a touch, of just a tiny bit of yellow ochre in that too. So looking at my picture, I can see that there is a drop shadow right at the very top of this. Add that in there. And then I can also see that it begins right about here. And follows down. So this is going to look a little intense right now, so don't get nervous or anything like that. It will be a little bit darker than what the final version of it will be, but that's okay. So it is going to be a little intense right now. But again, don't stress out. And if I'm looking really carefully, I can actually see that this drop shadow comes below, kind of like the middle of that of the leaf. Kind of like the stem of the leaf, I guess. So I'm going to work on adding that out. And then I'm going to work from the other side as well. It doesn't go very far. But once again, definitely there is a gap between the left side and the right side. So now I'm just going to look to see if there is any other place, and actually I'm thinking this one's a little bit longer up top than what I had originally. It's down a little bit more down to here. Just going to add that in, again, making that a little bit thicker there too. So work on adding in, to start off with, your drop shadow. So now that we have our shadow lines done, what we're going to do next is now we're actually going to work on our background. So if you look at the photo, you can see that the background is kind of white, but my paper is not. So, and probably yours may be the same way. So we're actually going to work on creating this background color. So this is a little harsh right now, so you're going to see how I'm going to cut this out a little bit. But you want to get a lot of white on your palette and maybe adding in a little bit of red. We might use some of the other colors too. So again, remember that white is really light, and so if I'm adding in, trying to do some painting with this, I don't need to add a lot of other color to it, but I do need to add some. So I'm going to take it first, that color that I had originally made for my shadow, and I'm going to work that in now. And I'm going to start off just by painting the edges of where that's at. Now that's going to look a little blue, so I know the complement to blue is orange, so I'm going to take a little bit of yellow now. And a smidge, tiniest bit of red. And we'll work on mixing those all together. And I'm going to come in. And now I need more white. So I'm basically now going to paint my background. And paint out these edges. So what I'm also going to do now is grab a little bit more of that base color. And while this is all wet, I'm going to work on basically fading that out some more. So again, I'm keeping in mind constantly if something is too blue, how do I tone that down if it's too purple, so on and so forth. How do I get those colors to basically calm down without being too overbearing. So you can see that obviously needs some white. And so what you're going to just do is you're going to focus on painting your background in as best as you can. And you're trying to match the color of that paper. So again, what's interesting with this is it's going to be a little bit different. It's not just straight white because of just obviously our computers and our tablets will give off that look. So we're trying to figure out kind of what that looks like. And again, there's a shadow here. So I will probably need to grab a smaller brush at some point. That's obviously a ton of red. So I'm going to tone that down. Again, that's orange. So now I'm going to grab some blue. Grab a little bit of that burnt sienna. You can see that's made a crazy kind of color. So now I'm going to come up here towards the top. And again, because I have a lot of color right now on that, obviously that looks a little bit different than what it needs to. So I'm going to work really carefully along that edge right now. Pull this color out as much as I can. Even though that's wrong, I'm going to now get some white on my brush. Just take my white right over top of all that. And again, as I'm working with this white, obviously I'm kind of putting it down a little bit, and then I'm not trying to overmix, so I'm going to keep moving myself out towards the edge of my paper. Just work your way out towards the edge of your paper as well, as best as you can, as you work on adding in basically that background. If you're really not satisfied with the how your shadows look, like I really don't like that, how harsh they are, I'm going to come in right now with the two colors that I used to make that original shadow color. And while this is wet, hopefully, I'm going to come in. Put down some color right again. Grab my other brush, which is in my hand. Make sure I have some white on there. And basically work on fading that out some. So if I kind of work the two together now, so I wiped off a little bit of paint. And now because that's wet with white, my shadow can kind of start to dissipate a little bit more. So now I can kind of pull that out some, so it's not nearly as strong as it was. Again, I keep kind of working that out up here along the top, making sure I don't throw my brush at myself. And blending it out as much as I need to, so then I can do the same thing down at the bottom as well. Again, with acrylics, you do have to work kind of quickly. So just keep that in mind. My heavens. If I could hold the brush in my hand, that'd probably be a good thing. So the paint on my brush is kind of starting to dry a little bit, so I do want to work a little faster. And notice that I did leave a lot of just background texture. That's okay. Now I don't really like the way that one looks at the top. It's too blended out. So I'm just going to come in along that edge and make that edge just a little bit cleaner. It's a very tight edge. So now I'm going to continue with my colors. And again, if I have too much, I'm noticing that I typically tend to get too much blue, like a warm color in there. So I then just make sure I have enough blue. And again, I'm going to pull out all that color that's on my brush. Just focus on grabbing white now. And then as I put that down, and again, you can definitely see my brush strokes, which you probably will see yours too, because of just the way you have to blend this out and the way you have to work. So just keep on working on your background, and just as you need to, like you can see I'm almost out of white. I'm going to keep adding white as I need on my palette, so that way I don't run out, but if I need it, and again, this part is still a little bit wet over here, so I can actually now work this out too, because that was a little too bright in my opinion. Notice I haven't grabbed any water while I'm trying to do this. The water would not work probably very well with it because it's going to water down my paint, and I don't want to water down my paint. So just keep working on your background.